Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another astrology update for this week. Today, I'm looking at the new moon in the sign of Virgo. That's taking place on September 2nd or 3rd, depending on where you are in the world. But for everyone, it will be happening at 11 degrees and 4 minutes of the sign of Virgo. Now, of course, with every new moon, we know that the sun and the moon are coming together in the same place in the sky from our geocentric perspective. This means that you will not see the moon. It's going to be completely dark. And this is a time when we plant seeds of intention, we start new things, and we might be beginning projects. And of course, that could mean that some things are, in fact, coming to a close. Some things are ending to make space for this new beginning. Now, with the sign of Virgo, themes that really come up are around service, whether that's volunteer service or service to people, especially with regards to health. So nurses and other people that are doctors and people that are in this relationship of being of service to others. But this can also be servicing the body, being concerned with health, being concerned with our own personal health. So that's starting new routines around a workout regimen or finding the right diet plan for you, whether that's an elimination diet, so getting rid of gluten, getting rid of sugar, getting rid of things that you know are not serving the body, and replacing those things with healthier options. So this is kind of a running theme of digestion too, being a theme of Virgo. And we'll get more into how going through the underworld is a theme of Virgo. But in terms of digestion, you know, the food that we take into our body and whether or not it's pure, whether or not it's clean, there's something very particular about Virgo. And it gets this reputation for being a little bit critical or self-critical or giving constructive criticism, but it's all for the sake of things being in their proper place. Another thing about Virgo is organized. Everything has its own place. Everything needs to go into that place. This has to happen in an order. There's a process. All of these themes bring the mind to Virgo themes. So, of course, when I'm talking about Virgo, I need to also be very practical because Virgo is very pragmatic, very down to earth. This is the earth domicile of Mercury, who we'll also talk about in a moment. But the earth mutable, changeable sign of Mercury and the feminine iteration of Mercury. And so there's this earthy part of it, very practical, very organized. Things need to be in their proper place, very serious to an extent, and very pure. Purity is a huge word for Virgo. And of course, because, you know, how we associate in this modern day and times before, virgin, Virgo, purity, chastity, all of these kinds of things are, you know, also related with this word virtue. Now, not to say that sexuality is the opposite of virtue or anything like that, but there's a particular nature about Virgo, and so that can be very selective too, and in that way we can kind of relate it with this idea of virginity. Now, another way that we can associate Virgo with virginity is to think about particular virgins in mythology. So one of them being Persephone, who is, of course, taken down into the underworld. But she does come back, you know, every 6 months. And so that's something interesting about that archetype. And also we can think of Vesta, the Vestal virgins, and Vesta being that sister that held the light for her siblings. She was the firstborn and the last to leave the belly of her father. She held the light for the rest of her siblings. And so there again, thinking in terms of how to be of service to others, but also how to be of service to your future self in this context that we're talking about here with a new moon. So don't pour from an empty cup. put on your mask first, as one of my really good friends likes to say when it comes to like being in the plane, and they always instruct you to put on your mask first, even before you take care of the little ones, okay? Because if you're not breathing, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. If you don't have water in your cup, then you're not going to be able to pour for anyone else. So it's, again, an order. It's a process. There are ways in which things need to be done. And we all know how to take care of our body. We all know what we need to do is wake up in the morning with positive affirmations or gratitude practices or a nice stretch, some meditation, a nice healthy breakfast instead of jacking ourselves up on coffee every morning and running out the door. There needs to be a process. There needs to be order. There needs to be a ritual. These are all things that are associated with Virgo. And just thematically thinking about the season within which Virgo is happening, this is transitioning from summertime into fall, but we're still kind of like lingering a bit in the summertime and of course taking on some of those nice cool breezes that are coming in from fall. But it's a mutable sign for that reason. Any of these signs that are in between seasons, it's adaptable, it's changeable, it's not fixed. So there's something about this that is process oriented, which is why that's such a great word for Virgo. Processing information, processing our food, a process for which things need to be done. So this sign is very good at analyzing things, but not so good at the big picture overall perspective, because that's going to be the opposite, which is Pisces. So we'll get to that when we get to the Pisces full moon. But now I want to talk about the ruler of this new moon very quickly, which is Mercury. Now, of course, we all know that Mercury was recently retrograde. Somehow this even ends up in the Farmer's Almanac at this point, which is amazing. I think that's great. And Mercury moved from Virgo, actually, in the backwards direction or retrograde motion back to this fiery sign of Leo. Now, Leo is bold, it's charismatic, it's theatrical, it's dramatic, because Leo is this sign that is about self-expression and having an audience to receive that. So being on stage, or, this is a very good sign to associate with like the star, the movie star, the rock star, whoever it is that we idolize as a leader, somebody that's demanding attention in this kind of way. So what does that mean for Mercury to be in Leo? Well, bold messages coming through Mercury to be in the sign of Leo is bold messages coming through because Mercury, if you remember, is the scribe, Thoth, Hermes. All of these archetypes that are associated with Mercury are telling the story, giving the information. And another thing about Mercury, Hermes, is that this is a god that can go through the underworld and come back up unscathed. So we were talking about how the Virgin takes us through the underworld and can come back out. And Mercury has this ability, which makes him very unique as a god. And so going through the underworld, coming back up, shape-shifting, because Mercury is a shapeshifter. That's how he can, utilize tools and things in the underworld and take on different faces, take on different images. So I imagine this as the narrator of the story, or the one that's on stage telling the story, that's giving the information. That's who Mercury is, and that's where the new moon is taking place, is in Mercury's house when Mercury is in Leo. So let me try to straighten out what I just said. Mercury is in Leo and he's ruling Virgo, where the new moon is taking place. So when Mercury is in Leo, there's something very bold and, maybe charismatic, but also demanding attention. And that is the conditions of the ruler of the house within which the new moon is taking place. So I hope this is making sense. That means that Mercury's condition in the sign of Leo has an impact on his own home. It's to say, the owner of the house is on stage. He's not here in the house, but he's on stage. He is narrating a story, and a new moon is taking place. A new project is beginning, or something is beginning in his home sign of Virgo, and that's the environment within which the new moon is taking place. Now, one last aspect that I'm going to mention is this trine with Chiron, the wounded healer, because Chiron is an asteroid, if I'm not mistaken, which I very well could be, but Chiron is this object in space and currently is in the constellation Aries from our geocentric perspective. And Chiron is another object that is associated with healing. Of course, we call it the wounded healer. Well, the myth of Chiron is that his mother did not want him because he was hideous to her. He's a centaur, and he was adopted by Apollo. And Apollo taught him many things, and among those things was herbal healing and healing the body. And so this is a big theme around this new moon, and this is why I really think that a lot of us are going to be beginning a health regimen, whether that's, practicing yoga in the morning, stretching our body out, going for a run, going for a walk, or even mental health, so meditating or affirmations, practicing gratitude, any of these things that are putting you present in the body, that is something that you can do on a regular basis. That is something huge for Virgo, because there's a process, remember? So doing things in order for my body to be healthy in the future. So especially with Chiron being in this sign of Aries, which is the quintessential I am. This is the first sign of the zodiac. It is the ram. This is the initiator. This is the warrior that's charging into battle. So keeping that in mind, that Mercury is in a trine position, there's a lot of fire here. That's what trines are. They are the same element. So in this case, the trine is between the sign of Leo and Aries, both of the same element, which is why they complement one another. And with trines, there is something falling into place here. Something is very natural about this connection between Mercury and Leo and Chiron in Aries. And so I think this is an insight to how we can start new routines around our health, around being of service, whether that's volunteer work, that could potentially be what we're looking at too. Whatever it is that's feeding you virtue, feeding you something pure, that's what is beginning. And so I hope that this is the beginning of me being a little bit more regular, perhaps with these updates. Or if not, that it's us beginning a new cycle. And for whatever it's worth, there's a new moon in Virgo every year. So if this is the time of year when we commit to a new or an assessment of our health, then make that the routine. That's plenty good enough to be something that you orient every Virgo new moon around, is a check-in with, am I waking up in the morning and doing something for myself that is oriented around my own personal health or my own work, being of service to myself in the future, and setting the conditions so that I can have an enjoyable and healthy lifestyle. So with all that being said, I do hope that you enjoy this new moon and that something is beginning for you that is going to benefit you now and in the future. And with all that being said, I will be back soon for another update on the astrology and transits.